Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Hi.
Liz, great to see you. Kathy, great seeing
Thanks
you.
for having
Michael,
me.
how's the weather out there?
Beautiful as always.
Always, yeah. Michael and I were on a previous podcast, and we were talking about the early days of Rustic Kitchen and the iteration of how it started. And when we moved to Boston, and Kathy and I came up with this idea to create this kitchen counter idea. And we had worked it around for a while. We had a couple of different people in there. It was popular, but we had some challenges. And what we realized is that the people that we had, which were very entertaining, and the audience loved that, but they weren't chefs. And
they couldn't answer questions like, how could I sub this recipe for this allergy or this preference?
And they had made some mistakes in technical questions. People asked them, how do I sear? How do I do this? And they didn't have great cutting skills. So the knife skills, which is immediate when people in the industry would be in there. So when we started looking for the next person to host these shows, we had sort of put the word out, but you can't run an ad in the classifieds for looking for a chef that can conduct live cooking shows as a host in front of an intimate audience that will, dine and ask questions, yada, yada, yada. That position didn't exist. So we were a little stumped. We had talked to some different people to put the word out, but we knew we needed a chef. And what Mom and I had decided was, let's find a chef and we will then train them how to do these shows. And the key ingredient is we needed a chef that had a great personality. And so that was our criteria. And very early
low
on,
bar. Chef with personality.
I don't know, oxymoron. So the chef that we had at the restaurant, Chef de Cuisine, a fellow named Mike Kelly, very talented guy.
At our Hingham restaurant.
He was at our Hingham restaurant. He came to us one day and he said, I understand you're looking for someone in, that cooking show you guys have. We said, yeah. And he said, I worked with this girl. She's a great chef and she's really a lot of fun. And I think she'd be perfect in that studio. And Mom said, have her give us a call. So
how do you know Mike Kelly, Liz?
So I met Mike Kelly when I started working at Tosca and Hingham in 2004. He and I think I actually worked the salad and dessert station, and he worked either first or second man on that line.
And where were you working? So when you first hear about Rustic Kitchen, what year do you think that is?
Probably 2000, and probably the year that Mike told me about it. I mean, for the most part, at that point in my life, I was just drowning myself in work all the time. So I never went out.
At the bakery on the Cape?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I was the pastry chef at Pan d'Avignon Bakery in Hyannis at that time.
So time goes on and we don't hear from Liz. And the next time we see Mike Kelly, we're like, Mike, whatever happened to that girl? And he's like, I tell her to call and, she hasn't called and now she's making me look bad. And so I think at that point, he reached out to you probably with a different demeanor. Is that right, Liz? And he said, you got to call these people because, now you're making me look bad. Did that sort of happen?
So Mike Kelly had originally reached out to me and said, I have an opportunity for you. And I'm not going to lie. I at that time, being at the bakery, I was going in at 1:00 in the morning and then walking out of there at 2 in the afternoon. And I would just go home and crash, and all normal people are functioning while I'm sleeping.
Were you living in Braintree and driving all the way down the Cape?
No, I was living in Hyannis at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was in Hyannis, and my life was just like the night shift. It was like third shift. And then he had called me. He may have just texted me at that point again. And I just didn't respond. And it was Chef Kevin Long who called me and read me the riot act and said,
oh, it was Kevin.
Don't be an A.
I
call
didn't
these
know
people
that.
back.
Okay. So yeah, he was the
Kevin
executive
from
chef of
Tosca.
Tosca.
Yes.
Yeah. And, okay. I didn't know that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that spurred you to finally reach out and call us.
Yes.
So do you guys think, do you first meet in Hingham or Boston when you
Hingham.
respond? You meet in Hingham. Okay. Do you think
No,
that, yeah?
first time
No.
we met was in Boston.
No, it was in Boston.
Yeah.
No, I remember sitting. You came into Boston finally. We kind of showed you what we were going to do. We showed you the room. And then we sat in a high booth in the bar and just kind of said, let's just talk. Tell us about yourself. Now, I had never seen Liz. She had piercings all around her ears.
A lot of them.
There was a chain connecting to the nose.
That's it.
down.
Let's talk like that.
She took that one off for the interview. Yeah.
She just talked, and we just talked, and we had some couple of glasses of wine, and we were just talking. And before we know it, an hour had gone by. And at that point, I think Liz said, I just don't think I can do this. I can't be in front of an audience and do that. And I said, I just turned to her and I said, you just did, and you killed it. I'm getting ahead of myself. What did you think? What was your response?
So now your memory is this happening in Hingham, this meeting?
No. So the first
okay.
time I believe I met Jim was in Hingham. We sat in that corner booth right next to the kitchen and had a seafood, and he brought up a
104.
seafood tower.
104. Yeah.
And I only met Jim there, and he gave me the rundown and told me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And what was happening, what was expected, what the future was, and then invited me to come into Boston and be a part of that. And that's when I met you, Kathy, and saw what the operation really looked like at that time.
I'll tell you, Liz, I have no memory of that whatsoever. So you didn't leave that much of an impression in that meeting.
Mike was in Hingham, and I had met you at Hingham, and I saw Mike, and Mike had made the formal introduction. It was brief. I was probably still asleep from work.
I probably thought I was interviewing you for the kitchen
You
show.
probably did.
That's the reason I mentioned the earrings and some tattoos, because that's not.
And she used to have that face tattoo you had removed, right?
Yeah.
It's your
It's true. It's the dagger and then the tears on the other side.
Right.
I think Jimmy was just a little bit nervous, I'm not sure, we're a family, right? And I'm saying, no, I think she's awesome. And I think she will do great.
And she thought you were cute. So,
But
at
more than
that
anything,
point,
just funny.
yeah,
funny.
funny and cute. And, we were.
I think everyone would love you.
Yeah. So, but
Thanks for always going to bat for me, Kathy.
you were reluctant. I remember you sort of ending the interview saying, I've never done anything like this. And we're like, we'll work with you. And there was some challenges because our shows were on Friday nights at 7:00. You were working in Hyannis, and you would have to leave Hyannis and then drive, what was that, an hour and a half?
At least.
And into Boston, and hit a lot of traffic once you got into Boston. And then we were sort of over on the west side corner there. And then you'd have to get into the parking garage, come down, then get ready for the show, then go in the studio and do the show.
Liz, when do you think this is? What month and year do you think you first come in?
Let me think about this. I think it was 2009.
Was that late?
No.
Okay,
No,
then.
No, it
2008.
was 2010.
No, it was 2008. I know it was 2008 when Liz came in.
Well, let's see. I
We opened in
graduated from
2006.
college, and
It was 2009.
so it wasn't 2008. It wasn't 2009. I graduated from college in 2007. I didn't move back to the East Coast until 2009. So I bet it was, and then I was at the bakery for a year. I think it was 2011. And did Bar Rustic.
Well, you were still working at the bakery when you started working for us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it was 2011.
All right, I'll go back and check.
Okay.
I'll go back and check. But
I probably still have my first pay stub. You laugh.
I'm
not surprised.
You probably
still
can't
have
be
the first
2011 because we had a 10-year anniversary for you, and that would have been during COVID, and we were done by COVID. Remember, it was your 10th year anniversary we celebrated in Kingston.
Yeah. So then it would have
Well, it had to
been
been before 2011 because that would have been 2021, and we weren't open.
I'm right. 2010.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
Kathy's like, all right, just everyone say it in unison.
So this was a lot. I remember it was a lot. And
so we had gone through like 3 different non-chefs at this point by the time you come in. So we knew we needed a chef. So now 2010, we were probably 4 or 5 years into Park Plaza being open. And so you were doing, when did you first go to PA to do a show? Or did you remember meeting Kate? Did you overlap with Kate in PA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we opened that in 2008. We opened that in 2008, guys. So I'm going to go back and figure this out. But regardless, Liz shows up and she starts to do these shows. And my memory, and correct me when, jump in any time here, Liz, but my memory was you were sort of being very perfunctory. You were worried about the food. You were worried about the technical side of things.
Correct.
You were worried about what you were preparing, being a chef, that not only had to look good, but it had to taste good. And what was happening is you were becoming preoccupied with the production of the food and not the engagement with the audience.
Correct.
And we were in sort of a couple of rehearsals here and there. And at one point I said, Liz, get your head out of the bowl. Do you remember that day? And I said, doesn't really matter what your food is. We're either going to eat it ourselves afterwards or it's going to go in the trash. Their food is coming from our kitchen. It's timed perfectly. It's plated to match what you're doing. You're really here for them, for that engagement. And I'm sure that probably made you even more uptight when I should have been the opposite and sort of trying to get you to relax. But there was a significant pivot that happened, and it went against my better judgment. It was you saying, I'd love my mom to come to a show. And I was saying, I don't know, because I felt that was going to make you more uptight. And, that's not a good thing right now. I'm trying to get you.
You didn't know my family dynamic yet.
Boy, did I learn. And so I said, fine. And your mother showed up with your brother. And they sat
Correct.
right in front of you at the counter. And now at this point, there was a backstory where I used to run the shows from a corner of the room. But at this point, we had moved the control room into my office, which was across the main dining room. So I'm no longer in the actual studio room. I can see what's happening from the cameras, and I can hear what's happening on the headset with some shotgun mics that we had set up, and you were mic'd up.
For people that heard the first, how big is this room? Give people, what's the dimensions of this first studio? It's like 15 by 10?
Not that small. I'd say it was probably 18 by 12.
It only had 12 seats around the counter.
Yeah, just the 12. And you were literally in the corner with a mixing booth. I think we had one camera that we had.
The first camera was a Sony Handycam that I had from the house, pulled it out of a closet, put it on a tripod.
And there's a phone, and you're literally on the phone with mom in the kitchen, which is behind the wall, before we have headsets. Of like, okay, now that this is where we are in the show, eventually we want to add more seats. So the mixing booth gets pushed out. We add 2 little corner seats, another second row.
Right.
You move to the office we run, cable. You guys get headsets. So yeah, that happens. Do you think, Liz, when you started, do you think we already had those 2 corner seats, or we were just the counter?
No, yes. The whole room at that point was complete as far as I know it.
So over those years, that there was a lot of, we start from literally, the first show wasn't filmed. Hail Caesar, there's no footage of that. That was a live show, $30. And over the 4 or 5 years before Liz gets there, that's when we add the cameras. This is all Jake adding in the lights, adding in the rows, and it really turns into a studio and less of this chef's table. So when you come in, we've already kind of have an upgrade because of Jake.
Yeah.
And we had done some filming. And then you come in, and do you just do Friday nights? You do Friday and Saturday?
That's a question.
We never did Saturdays.
Just
in
just
Boston.
It was always Fridays, even all the
You
way.
would do private shows, right?
Yes.
We did
we would do
private shows,
privates, yeah.
which were very popular.
Those private shows were great.
Yeah.
How long into it do you leave the bakery and start working in Boston? Because you were working at Red Lantern, right?
So after I left the bakery, I went to work with my friend Lee and did consulting work for a year and a half. And then after working with him, I ended up at Red Lantern in Boston. And I was with Red Lantern I did open it as the pastry chef.
Yeah, yeah.
That
was convenient because it was close.
It was like
to the
2
restaurant.
blocks apart.
Yeah.
So on Friday nights, I would literally run just after working all day long, run over. Actually, it was great because I could park my car at Rustic Kitchen.
And by the way, they weren't happy with this because obviously you're on their busy night. Your caveat was, hey, I work here, but I need Friday nights off because I'm doing this cooking show for a
Not off.
competitor.
I would work all day, and then what time do we start the show? 7.
7
Would run at 6 o'clock down the street and get to work at get to Rustic Kitchen at 6:30. Throw on makeup, do my hair, put on a fresh chef jacket, do the show, and then complete. This was before I even started mingling with the guests at that point.
Right, yeah.
And then I would run back into the office, take off the clean chef coat, put on the dirty chef coat, wipe my makeup off, and then run back down the street to finish service on a Friday night. And then if we had a Saturday private show, I would do the same thing.
Right.
And then were you still living in Hyannis that you would have to drive then an hour and a half back down the Cape?
No. Where was I living?
Didn't you move to Marshfield? Didn't you move to the family house or?
I'm trying to think of where I was living when I was at Red Lantern.
This is before Marshfield, I think. Yeah.
I was in.
I think you were in Braintree. I think you were.
No, we hadn't lived in Braintree in a while.
No. Okay.
I can't remember if I was living in Boston at that time or not.
But you were doing a lot. You were driving a lot. You were working in multiple places.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So eventually there's a conversation of why don't you just work for us?
Well, there were two things that happened that are important. First, just to wrap up my earlier thought, when Liz's mom and brother came to the show, what happened was it allowed Liz to relax, sort of forget about what was going on, and her personality comes out. And they start telling stories about when she was a little girl, and she used to be a competitive figure skater, and they started talking about that. And one thing,
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah, figure skater.
She was a figure skater.
I thought she was a great skater. So
my mom tried to give me all those trophies, by the way. I was like, don't peddle your garbage on me.
So they have a great show, and I can't quite see the audience. In those days, we might have had 1 or 2 cameras, but none were focused on the audience, so I couldn't tell what was going on with the audience. And when the show wrapped up, Liz used to exit the side of the studio, and then she would have to go through the kitchen and then out through the dining room to get back to the area where our offices were, where my control room was. And along the way, she started to realize, oh my God, what did I do? I'm going to get fired. And as she came into the control room,
it was like this. This is the best show you've ever done.
And she looked at me and she goes, I thought I was in trouble. I said, no, that's it. That's what I want you to do. And it all sort of sunk in. And then it was really just, how far can I go? How much can I get away with to say to people during these shows? And that
was my biggest challenge was during the show.
Raunchy.
Trying to get her to stop dropping the F-bomb.
Right.
Throughout
these
the
became
show.
very adult.
I'm like,
don't talk about plastic surgery that the woman in front of you just had.
At this point, we're filming.
Don't go there.
We're filming. I'm like, we can't use that now because you just said, look, 10 times.
Right. Unlike this podcast, you can do anything, Liz. We don't care. You can say what you want.
You were actually drinking with one of our old hosts. We had to change out the for grape juice because they would get you drunk.
Right.
Oh my
God. Wine.
Yeah. There was a time when you gave up alcohol and we had to put Welch's grape juice.
I think there were a couple of times where every time we had a Chardonnay, I could do Chardonnay.
Patio pounder. I learned that term from you.
Oh, patio pounder.
How many shows
Goes down like water. And Kathy would always give me which wine?
Kim Crawford.
Guess what we have waiting for you today?
Free ads. No free ads.
Which, by the way, you can start drinking with
KC.
Kim right now.
It was a Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
And even if the show wine pairing was a Pinot Grigio or Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc, I always had to have her specific Sauvignon Blanc in her glass.
Right.
It's the perks of the job.
No matter what.
I remember an early show with you that was a turning point where there was this young kid that was like a culinary student that tried to challenge your knowledge. You know, he had just learned something that day, and he was pestering you with questions. And, you know, you're a real chef, and you were just, everything you lobbed up, you would shoot down with an entire explanation and then the history. And eventually he just shut up and he left. He was so embarrassed he left because we're filming this.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
And he leaves. I was like, that's our chef.
There you go. Yeah, that was great. That was really the only time I ever saw anyone try to challenge Liz. But
yeah,
you don't remember this?
Maybe it's because I don't remember it as a challenge.
Right.
It's just, I thought it was just like casual conversation, witty banter. I ruined some college kid's life.
Basically.
So
maybe he'll see this podcast.
when Liz is, when we're recording the shows and I'm doing edits, you know, we're going to talk about Jake teaching me all of this post-production work, but at the time we were using Final Cut Pro, and what was happening is I was seeing from week to week to week in the show edits, especially when I would try to compare and mix and match things I needed, Liz is losing weight, okay? She's getting thinner and thinner and thinner to the point, and Kathy...
And I have to keep getting her new chef coats.
You're swimming in these chef coats.
Right, so Kathy's ordering more chef coats, which we had custom tailored for you. We had that woman down on the South Shore that used to...
Which said Ling because of the font.
Right.
Instead
Ling,
of Liz,
Ling,
Ling.
Ling Ling.
That's where Ling Ling comes from, right? So, you know, Kathy and I talk about it, and I said, "What do you think's happening?" She goes, "They're working it to the bone. You know, ask her what she does." So one day you came in, and I said, "What was today like?" And I think you said, "Well, I had to make 300, you know, blueberry pies today." And I said, "You and a team of people?" She said, "No. I made 300 pies today. That was today's assignment." And I said, "Do you have a lot of help down there?" And she goes, "No." And, you know, she would be the one taking these 50-pound bags of flour and, you know, stacking them up and making the doughs and whatnot. And they literally were just working her to the bone. And at one point, some conversation happened between Mom and Liz where Kathy said, she came into me and she goes, "We want Liz to come work here in Rustic Kitchen, put her in the kitchen, and then she'll do the shows." And I think, did you have Fridays off because you were doing the Friday shows with us? Did you work 5 of the, I forget exactly
that. I don't remember. Remember. I could have. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just had like 2 actual days off every week, which was a new concept to me.
Yeah.
Coming to work for Rustic Kitchen and being a part of the culinary program, not just the show, was like a godsend, because if I needed anything, I was comfortable with you guys. I could come to you and talk to you and just say,
right.
"Hey, you know, I'm going on vacation, or I don't feel well, or I need help." Blah, blah, blah.
And it was a huge benefit to us because now you were prepping for the shows. Mom used to prep the shows before.
Oh, that's right.
And so Liz was now there to prep the show. And more importantly, which was sort of the side added bonus, we had never had a walk-in cooler so organized.
You are the queen of organizing walk-in.
Yes, the queen of organizing.
Anything.
The whole kitchen.
Everything. I mean, in no
you
time
give this
at
girl
all.
a label maker and just walk away.
Exactly. A label maker. And she had me order her these custom plastic clips that would snap on the front of the Metro racks. And then she made names for everything where it would go, because deliveries are coming all the time and not necessarily on days that she's there. And she wanted everything not only put in, but rotated. And, you know, for the non-industry people, they need to understand that a walk-in cooler, our walk-in cooler over there, at any given time had over $30,000 worth of product in it. You know, it's your bank.
Which you understood, which most people in the kitchen didn't understand.
That was so important to Liz.
The money concept of this is inventory, this is product.
How much everything costs.
Yeah. One time when we had a power outage and we lost everything in our walk-in and we settled that particular insurance claim, it was $33,000 of just product in the walk-in, not including the freezer. So Liz takes control of this, cleans it up, comes up with a program, comes up with clipboards, everything that goes in gets assigned, everything that comes out gets signed for. So you can do inventory a little bit quicker. Everything gets reorganized. I mean, I would come in days and the door would be open and she'd be in there like a Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, she's
sharing the plate.
climbing up the shelves and cleaning the ceiling and mopping the walls.
And she'd be mad because she had taught these people how to keep it organized, and she'd be off for 3 days and come in, and there'd be hell to pay for those people. But it was great for us because we now finally had organization. And the other thing about kitchens is chefs kind of fall into two categories. There are the creative chefs that can create and cook and really just work magic, and then there are kitchen manager type chefs that know how to run a business and how to keep their costs in line. But very rare is it that one person can do both. They're usually one or the other. So now Liz is there and she does both, and she knows how to wear the kitchen manager hat when she's in that mode, and then she knows how to do the creative side when she's in that mode. So all of these things we didn't know. These are all pleasant surprises. And then, the shows were growing in popularity, and so now Liz is doing the shows, and Kathy's making them more complex because she could. That was another added bonus. I don't know if you remember this, Liz, but some of the previous hosts before you, we used to have cue cards that we put up in the back for what we thought would be the questions asked about that show, so the answers were right there, because sometimes they would get stumped, and she didn't have to do that anymore because you could handle any question that came along.
Kathy did do some signage for me, though.
Well, that
like
was
if I was
that
not
had to do with the profanities. Like don't
go through the rehearsal perfectly within the first 2 times. Wouldn't you have like buzzwords on cards like beef? And you would think, just because in the very beginning, Jim, as you said, I had the culinary technique, but it took a while for you guys to develop my personality. I mean, I always showed up with a personality, but it's easy to be funny with 4 people. It's difficult to be funny in front of 20 strangers.
But you did it, and there were times when you would go. You would go on and on and on about the stories of your chickens and the things, and I'm there going, wrap it up,
your
wrap
uncle,
it up. I got the
fisherman
food coming out. Stop talking.
Did you have an uncle that was like a fisherman or something?
Yeah, my Uncle Peter.
Yeah, right. Those stories.
Food specialties.
So like before we jump into like John Fooey and start doing Comcast, and I just looked up salmon fishing in the Yemen. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That's 2011. You and for the first few years, all I remember was your pastry chef. I didn't learn your history until later. So you start cooking at 14, basically professionally, right? Give us your
15.
Okay, yeah. Get us from 15 Braintree back to where we are.
Okay.
You're called, yeah.
Okay, so you just want basically my culinary
you go to
career.
Culinary school. You go to Vegas. Tell us that story.
Okay. So I actually started cooking at a restaurant in Marshfield, Mass. called Feet the Fieldston. My first summer there, I was 15 years old. The owner was one of my stepfather's best friends, which was the only reason why I was even allowed in the kitchen. And it was a summer job, and I loved it. And I went back the following summer, and that was actually how I was able to apply and qualify to go to CIA, because you needed at least 6 months of culinary experience. So I did that. And then I went to Culinary Institute of America in New York from 2003 to 2007. Hyde Park, New York. At that time, that was the only fully functioning campus. They also had Napa Valley, but at that point, it was just like a wine program. And graduated with my bachelor's 2007, moved out to Las Vegas, worked in several casinos and a restaurant out there. Had a great time in Vegas. Highly recommend at the age of 21 years old. It's a life-changing experience. And I was out there for a year and a half. And at that point, I was asked to come back. It was actually what I refer to it as purchase back to on the East Coast, and I opened the MGM Tower in Foxwoods. And I was there. I opened Shrine Nightclub. I stayed and did that for a year and a half and then left. And that's when I ended up at Pan de Mignon Bakery.
Were you trying to, when you make that shift to bakery, were you like done working on a hotline? What was the impetus there?
I was tired.
Yeah.
And I was not losing steam with culinary, but I just needed a change. Sometimes you get a little bored doing the same thing over and over again. Even when you change cuisines, you're still going through the motions. And working in a kitchen is very taxing physically, mentally, and emotionally. So I wanted something that was a little bit of a change of pace. And I ended up going in the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I mean, ended up being the pastry chef at an artisan bakery. And that sounds all well and good, but this artisan bakery produced 15,000 pounds worth of bread every day. It's incredible.
Yeah, this wasn't you doing, happy birthday piping on some supermarket sheet cakes every day.
Correct. So I went basically, but it was different. So there's a recipe for everything and you have to follow it and you have to teach yourself to be patient, even though you're doing, 500 scones in a batch. It's still science. And I enjoyed that. And for years, actually, I kind of flip-flopped back and forth between culinary and baking and pastry. And that gave me peace of mind. It was like, okay, I'm feeling a little burnt out. Let's switch it over. Okay, this is boring. Let's get back into the exciting half and just go back and forth.
And were you getting to do the purchasing and sourcing and costing side at this point, or that comes later?
That happened a lot in Connecticut. And that was when I realized that I really loved it. I liked being in charge of the day-to-day. I liked being in charge of the culinary finances, so to speak. I love organization. I think that people don't realize how much being organized helps them on a daily basis. Think about in your kitchen, your spoons are in the same drawer all the time. That's just simple organization, but you don't think about it that way. And you just go right to that drawer, you take out your spoon, you go to the same cabinet, you pull out your coffee cup. But that was when I really enjoyed it. At the bakery, it was organized chaos because there were so many people involved in every process. And then when I left the bakery and did consulting work, again, I was heavily involved with the culinary finances and organization at that point.
All right. So now eventually I think we call you executive sous chef at some point in the Rustic Kitchen.
Yep.
Probably to protect the ego of whoever was the executive chef at that time. So now we're like 2010,
Chefs
11.
have egos?
I've heard. Yeah. And so the live shows are going fine, but I think Jim wants to jump into this whole Comcast adventure. And then Firehouse Chili is coming to mind, and the Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. So Salmon Fishing was doing CBS Films, was premiering the film.
They came to us.
Somehow they reached out to us.
I think what happened was they had found out about us through Catherine Shahade, again, our publicist, and she brought them in and they said, look, we're going to be opening this movie called Salmon Fishing in the Yemen with Ian McGregor over at the ABC theaters on Tremont Street.
Too, I think is
Emily Blunt,
yeah.
Before she was, that big. Mm-hmm. And we want Liz to come over and sort of intro the show, because there'll also be people from the director will be there. There'll be a Q&A like they do in LA for, these openings, these pre-openings. We want Liz to be there and talk about salmon and, where you get it from and so forth and so on.
And we had started filming these kitchen tips.
So we were doing
because one of the kids just remember the fish she had animated.
Salmon fishing in the Yemen.
So we actually did one on location.
Massive.
Actually, who was it? Jim and
someone's on a ladder holding it.
Jim was holding it.
It was
yes,
me. It was Pepe and me, and Jake was filming
a real fish. And then we animated the mouth to go salmon fishing in the Yemen.
Right. We have that clip. I'll drop that clip in. We went on to location at Northeast Seafood over in the Seaport.
North Coast.
Sorry, in the Seaport. North Coast.
Mike Foley was our good friend there.
Mike Foley.
I still talk to Mike Foley.
Tell Mike we said hello, by the way.
I will.
And so we went over and filmed on location there all through the plant and the processing and so forth. But we also went to the dock where their boats actually own their own boats, and their boats come in. We wanted to get a couple of shots with Liz on the dock next to one of their boats. And Liz is at the end of the dock, and this massive tugboat is coming in, and they figure out we're filming. And Liz she's wearing Grundens, orange Grundens, and she's got the blue sort of ski cap on.
I'm wearing a sweater that's very similar to this.
Yeah.
And I love that.
You put your cigarette on that anchor tattoo you had.
And these guys start tooting their horn at Liz, and she's facing us. The tugboat's pulling up behind her, and they're yelling out the window, and they want to get her attention, and she's trying to ignore them. And the more she ignored them, the more raucous they became. It was a problem. They kind of ruined the shoot. We had to wait till they were
sexual harassment. Yeah.
It was fisherman harassment. But that footage plus the footage of being inside the processing plant we used to create the kitchen tip. And then Liz did a whole recipe of what to do.
With the salmon tartare,
salmon
right?
tartare, one of our most popular dishes. Yeah.
So so over at the Boston Common, there's a movie theater. They had a premiere there. We show that pre-roll. You do like a special show. We do a special dish, and then Firehouse Chili is probably around the same time as this, right?
Firehouse Chili is a friend of my brother's, a guy named Dennis Keeley, who was a district chief in the Boston Fire Department. I talked to my brother about it. He reached out to Dennis, and Dennis, I said, their firehouse was right down the street. It was about 2 blocks away. And with some coordination, he had to go all the way to the top, but he got approval for us to go into the firehouse and film there. So on this particular day, I think it was a Saturday, we had scripted this whole thing, and it was Jake, Liz, and myself, and we carry all our gear up there, and Liz wears one of the chef coats, and she arrives, and we have this whole routine of things that she's going to do. And the story behind it was, or the backstory was, because in firehouses, they do their own cooking, they have their own kitchens, and some of these guys are actually very good cooks, but sometimes they have to suffer through whatever happens to be available. But if you talk to any firehouse worth their salt, they all brag about their chili. We have the best chili around. So Firehouse Chili is a big competition amongst that group of people, that demographic. And of course, Liz had a chili that we served at the restaurant that was outstanding. So I still
make that chili.
It's
oh my God,
fantastic. So we set up this skit where Liz would go up. They'd want to impress her with their chili, and then of course she would show them the right way to cook Firehouse Chili. And at the end of it, which we didn't know at the time, but we found out later, the oven that they had in the firehouse was really this decrepit old, appliance that they didn't really use much, and it was covered with all kinds of pots and pans and things. And I had lined up with Jerry Hyman, by the way, from Trimark United East, president of Trimark, to donate a brand new oven with a salamander that would be delivered at the end of the show. We actually reshot that later on when we went back up there. And what I didn't know is Dennis had so much pull. He actually had like 3 other engine companies show up with all of their trucks, all of their guys. And we had Trimark deliver the stove, and they polish it up, and then they take Liz in for the photo shoot. They pick Liz up. One of these guys comes over and scoops her up. And because they're used to, saving people that are in buildings that are on fire, and
they didn't firehouse throw her over the shoulder.
and Bill Brett, who was the Globe photographer, was there, and he gets the shot.
Yeah, it was in the Boston Globe. Yeah.
In the Boston Globe.
You're forgetting, though, that all our ideas for that day were ruined by it's one of the busiest firehouses, and every 5 minutes the alarm would go up and they all leave. Yeah. And so we'd be sitting and we'd wait for them to come back from that call. Yep. We'd try again, and then it goes off again.
Yeah, Dennis had come in on his day off, and but the guys are coming and going. The alarm never stopped. Yeah, I forget how many times it went off, but it prolonged the shoot for the entire day. Mm-hmm. And then one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted Liz to slide down the pole. Now
And
Liz
you were
is wearing high heels, black creased slacks, and
I
her chef
remember
coat,
this.
and all of her makeup, and
You were afraid to go down that pole.
Oh,
Yeah,
we did that
and I
on the
never
pole.
went down the whole
We
thing.
faked it.
So
we faked it.
we
We
faked
had
it
to
afterwards, right?
You had me
choke
go up
a
on a
little bit,
ladder, and they were
then-
like, "Hold on," and then just fake drop.
When
What
I
did I
first
drop?
said,
Like
Liz, go
5
down the
feet?
pole, she looked at me like,
My granddaughter and grandson went down the fire pole at their father's, our son-in-law's firehouse in New
a couple
York.
weeks ago.
But
38 to
Liz was
51 in the
afraid to go.
Bronx.
Right.
And
Mhm.
they're only 8 and 6, and they
Right,
went down
yeah.
the fire.
So Liz looks at me and she lets me know in a few choice words, I'm not going down that pole. So I'm like, okay, well, with the magic of television, we can still get the shot. So, at Firehouse, they have this round plywood cover that covers the hole for safety when they're not using it. Although it does have this clamshell that opens up when you go through it.
Okay.
And what we did was we filmed Liz going down out of the camera frame, and then we filmed her at the very bottom of the pole coming down, tailing off, and
Go up a
saying,
ladder, and
That's
pull
not
a
so-
ladder out of the shot, and
and
just
then-
slide down
yeah.
3 feet. Yeah.
and then at the end, as a blooper, we show how we put it all together. And
So
Dennis
this
loved that.
became like episode 1 for
This was episode 1.
Comcast.
This was
Yeah.
the pilot for Comcast, right?
So this is now. So we started putting, Comcast. John Flewy had seen a postcard in the restaurant for these shows
in Hingham.
in Hingham.
In Hingham.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and he was
Because
like
the Comcast was in Hingham,
right.
not too far down from the restaurant, and he
And they
used to
would go
come
there.
in to eat a lot. And he
And they
saw
were at
the
the
postcard at our host stand.
They were looking for content for on demand,
Yep.
which this is almost. This is 15 years ago. So they were
Yeah.
trying to build up their local, in all the Comcast markets. They had a New England on demand, a Great Lakes on demand. And we were going to be this lifestyle food thing that people who were subscribers, like 10 million subscribers around New England, could watch. And he pitches it to his team, reaches out to us, and we start cutting together these 20, 30-minute episodes on top of the live shows.
Right. And as we were delivering them, there was the backstory. There was when he approached us, and we were very excited about it. And then, of course, reality sets in. We talked to Jake, and Jake says, "Well, you're going to need a lot of equipment here to meet television specifications. You're going to need better lighting, better microphones, better cameras. Where are you going to edit all this? And everything that was
Whoops.
done in that studio was funded by the restaurant." And I don't control the money. Kathy controls the money. So I go to her and I say, Kathy, I'm going to need a couple things for this podcast thing. And she goes, well, what do you need? And I have this list that Jake had put together. It was a lot of money. And she looked at me like, are you crazy? And I said, well, this is a unique opportunity. And of course, Mom always finds a way. She finds the money. And we buy everything from B&H. We become great friends with B&H. And Jake helps me. And we bring the studio up to a television quality studio. And we also had to learn how to use it. It was a lot more complicated. But once we had that, we really had a television studio. And we just built off of that. We've built 4 studios since the original
They had
one.
these early Panasonic robotics. They did a whole feature, a spread in the Panasonic catalog about the original studio because of how we were using their cool robotics.
Nobody thought of using that way. Their market they were going after were churches and choirs. Buy one of these, and you could have a joystick and control it, and you could see, the sermon, or then you could see the choir. By taking what we knew the capabilities were, and we just did it because we had to. We figured out, how about this, how about that? And Jake, being the genius that he is, when we put these cameras in at that application, which we thought was kind of normal, they had never even thought of that. And that's why we were in their annual journal, big write-up. They were amazed at what we did with their products. Those cameras, we have better versions of them. They still exist today. Now the PTZ is in the lexicon of that industry, and they're used for a lot of reasons. But at the time, we were the only ones doing that. And I could run the show myself. One person, I could run up to 5 cameras.
We were
And
the
we
only
had
ones doing a cooking show inside a restaurant.
Right.
I
Which
think about that all the time.
Yeah.
people,
There's so many shows and programs and things of that are so similar to what we did, and the way that you guys put it together, the way that it hosted, the way that we recorded and created these episodes. Nobody did that. Nobody. Do you know how many job interviews and offers I've gotten solely based on videos that they've seen on YouTube or the web or
and OnlyFans?
Yeah.
Michael, Jesus, I hope my stuff's not on OnlyFans.
The gift that
Some
keeps on
people have a
giving.
food fetish. You
Right,
never
right,
know.
right. That's
Do you
true.
remember? I remember you had a stalker.
Oh, you had
I-
lots of show guests.
He has asked me to be friends on LinkedIn.
Really?
Recently?
Yeah, like within the last year.
That was a long time. That was a long time ago that he.
really
Every
is a stalker.
year
At this
he
point, he is a
every
stalker.
year he
Yeah.
surfaces.
And how many marriage proposals have you had?
Oh God.
A lot. A lot.
I will be marrying myself shortly, so I'll let you know before I send the invitation.
I used to get all the DMs from our social media and our website, and after every weekend show, there'd either be like a proposal for you, or it would be someone wanting you to come to their house and be like, can she just come
Private
cook
jet.
for us?
Yeah.
that we got all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
For $20,000,
Yeah.
one easy payment, cash. Nobody
So-
took us up on the offer.
So Comcast, it launched us into a new territory, and we
Mhm.
had to figure it out, but it was a big thing for us. And
Yeah.
what we did was, by recording these shows, we were doing one style of show for up to 8 weeks at the time. So, which later on got shorter and shorter, and from popularity, people would almost want the show to change every 4 or 5 weeks. But at the time, it was every day.
We would do the same dish,
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what was happening is we would film a couple of them and then edit them together. Liz always had to wear the same exact outfit, the same, makeup. She had to be the same in case I cut from one week to the next. But that meant we really could only give 5 or 6 shows to Comcast a year, unless we did a special in the middle of that. And as we started to tighten that, we would get to be more. But after the first year, and by the way, so I create these assets. I work on Saturdays with Jake. We work all weekend, and we put a show together, and I put it on a hard drive, and I drive down to Hingham, and I would drop it off. And we had a schedule we had to hit. So if I got it there by a certain day, which is usually by a Monday morning, it would start to air the following Friday, and it had a whole run. But Comcast protocol is that they don't give out any information. They don't tell you viewership or anything like that. We don't.
It's like Netflix today, where they don't share streaming.
They don't
data.
share anything.
Yeah.
So, I every once in a while I'd say to John, "How are we doing?" And he said, "You're doing great. It's very popular. People really like it. We're getting good response." Okay.
It was so
So-
weird to be able to turn on the TV in our house and see the show that we produced.
And
Right.
we would have people like driving down from New Hampshire or like Vermont and be like, "Oh yeah, I watch you." I was like, "You drove 2 hours from Vermont to?"
Yeah.
Because they saw us, right?
We had people that
right.
would come to the
Yeah.
shows from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So
So-
the happy accident of all this is because Comcast forces us to meet television standard. Carol Beggy tells us. Carol Beggy was a reporter and a local producer and publicist. She says, "Well, you can submit to the
Well,
Emmys."
John
because
Foley was the first one to say that.
You think? Oh,
Well,
John
what
said it.
happened
Okay.
was I was late in delivering a file one time, and I called on Monday morning. I said, "I've gotten tied up. We had restaurant issues, and I won't be able to get it there till maybe like Wednesday." And I was panicked. And the girl that was my liaison, she said, "Don't worry about it. We're fine. As long as we air by Friday." They always wanted to give themselves a couple of added days just in case. They also have to view it, and they have to sign off on it. So with that particular week, when I was late, I get down there and I'm apologizing profusely. And I said, we really don't want to lose this spot. And she looked at me and she said, "Are you kidding? This is the most popular lifestyle show in all of New England on demand for Comcast." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Absolutely." She said, "Don't worry. You guys are fine. Everyone's very, very happy with you." So I then asked John, as a follow-up to that conversation, about how we were doing. And that's when he said, "Guys, what you really should do is submit for Emmy consideration at the end of, you have to have it in by February for the prior year." And we talked to Carol, who knew all about it. There's a whole world that we didn't know, we didn't understand about the Emmys, and there's a network, and it's something that was just very.
There's a national academy and then regional chapters, and every chapter has their own Emmys.
So the National Association of Television Arts and Sciences, NATAS, is the parent company that you see overseeing the Emmys, and they you had to join. We weren't members, so that was the first thing we had to do. We all had to become members, and then and Jake was very familiar with this because of his production background. And his first reaction to this was, "You guys, look, you're not gonna win an Emmy. So if you want to do it, it's expensive, first of all, but it's a lot of work. But you'd be lucky someday to get a nomination." And I was like, "Well, I want to try." Kathy's saying
the people that we're submitting against are the Red Sox,
the Boston Globe, the Celtics, all these huge, multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar corporations. Yeah. So, but Mom, she, I think I wore her down. Ultimately,
and WGBH,
all the big ones, HGH,
Julia Child fame, and
all these well-funded, NPR, all these well-funded groups. So I think I wore Mom down. But either way, she finally said okay, because we had to spend quite a bit of money for this. And we become members, and Jake oversees all the submittals, and we have to go through, and there's all kinds of rules, what you can and can't do. Mm-hmm. And we ultimately submitted the first year in 7 categories.
Mm-hmm.
And off they go. And then once they're gone in February, then you don't hear anything till June. So you forget about it.
Well, you also have to act as judges for other categories.
I forgot about that.
Not right away.
Areas, not in New England, but so you have to log on
as Academy members. Yeah, you have a duty to judge.
All 4 of us had to log on under our membership,
region,
and then they would give you a different region in a different category, and you'd have to judge them.
But that was after we became winners. That wasn't right away. That was
I think that was right away. As a Academy member, once you become a member, you have to judge. Okay. Yeah,
I remember Liz was like, "Can you just log me in and let me get it done? Because you got to sit there and go through."
Because you were one region. So say you were watching Best Breaking News, you'd be watching the same tornado from 5 different stations' perspectives.
Right. Yes.
But it'd be the most the thing you submit to the Emmys is the most tragic story of the year. So the marathon year, I remember having to watch 12 Boston Marathon things over and over and over.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing we lived it. Yeah. We didn't know there were very few independent production companies doing the kind of production we were doing. We were always up against the big news networks or the big sports teams. That's where all the money was. Yeah. So we were really very special in that regard, and we learned that later. But I don't know if you remember this story, Liz, but Michael and I were in Mexico. We had become partners with a family restaurant group down there, and we ultimately at one point had 3 Rustic Kitchen license deals. But we were in
Mexico City.
We were in Mexico City, and we were having dinner. And
that's what we found out. We were in Mexico.
Our phones were blowing up, and we were having a business dinner. So I turned
Mom
mine
won't
off.
stop calling. Mom was silencing Mom on the phone.
So Michael finally says, "Dad, I got to take this call." Mom's calling. I'll be right back. And he goes outside of the restaurant.
Hola.
And she tells him. She tells him that we received 6 nominations. And Michael comes in the restaurant on cloud 9, jumping up and down. And all protocol for this meeting is over, and we go right into celebration mode. They're thrilled. We're
Jose
thrilled.
Cuervo all around. La Reserva, the nice one.
Yeah. And that was another whole world that we had to enter.
And do you remember our first? We got 6 nominations, and when we go, this big ballroom, we are the last table in the back corner
next to the kitchen.
We're at
we're in the busser station.
Nobody's.
So it was the 4 of us plus Jake and Emily.
Yep. Dad's sister crashed.
And my sister Liz. And
the 4 of us.
But I don't know if you ever picked up on this.
We had to
tickets
buy
our table.
So tickets for the table. So it was 4, 5, 6. And was it your sister and Dan?
I don't know if they were at the first one. I can't remember.
Oh, the first one.
No.
We had like two people from New Hampshire at our table.
Other nominees.
Do you remember?
Yeah, there was another nominee.
It was like
a local
the other small, other small production.
The nobody
program.
first timers were in the back corner. And every year we moved one row up.
Well, that's because
the girl says,
Jim called our company Honey Bunny Media, and people thought it was a porn company.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to deny that.
So I'm introducing myself as I am producer of Honey Bunny Media.
And I would go, and
here's
I'm
my
Honey
chain.
Bunny. You are my Honey Bunny. That's why I became Honey Bunny Media. So,
and of course, it was
the girl said, we said, what are you here for? She goes, oh, we have a nomination in some category. And then she said, what are you guys nominated for? And Michael says, well, we have 6 nominations. And he rattles off all 6. And, the girl kind of shrinks. And so as the night goes on, each category comes up and they read it off and we lose. And the next one comes up and we don't win. And the next one, and the night's going on because we're
drinking more and more.
We're drinking more and we're getting discouraged. And
we're getting drunk.
Now what Jake has said is coming true. He's like, you're never going to win. You should be happy to have the nomination, which we learned to say and believe. It really truly.
You should be happy
to be nominated.
Saying is much easier than believing.
Right. But
which
still,
for perspective now that I know, so the primetime Emmys now, so like to get a late night nomination, there's like only 6 submissions. Everyone gets nominated. If you have a show on air now, you get an Emmy nomination. It's much harder on the regional level when you have 1,000 submissions just to get a nomination.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the very end of the night, the last category comes up, and at this point we're half in the bag.
Yeah.
And
all the tables around us have left.
They're gone.
That's right. That's right.
I'm stealing desserts from other tables. I'm stealing chocolates and cakes. I'm eating my money's worth tonight.
Hey, we were having a good time, regardless of what happened.
Yeah. The New Hampshire couple is loving us.
Yeah, and they read off.
We were just doing what they wanted to do.
And they start playing our music, and that's actually
when you hear the music.
It was our intro music.
That's our theme song.
And I remember because Liz was facing me, Mom was next to me, and Liz says, "We fucking won." And we're looking. Are you sure? Are you sure? And there's our music, and we're like, "We won." And we started jumping up and down.
And there's like one person clapping.
And because I go up there and give a very long thank you speech until the big.
I'm literally trying to pull you off the podium
until that brown hook comes out and grabs me by the neck and pulls me off. And even then, I'm still, and I want to thank my grandmother, and off we go. And that was the beginning. And everyone.
So that was interstitial.
Yeah, which is like a
best
short program.
interstitial program.
Interstitial. That was with the God rest his soul. Ron Brace.
From the New England Patriots.
He was in that episode.
Yeah, what a great personality he had. What a great guy.
Yeah.
I remember when he walked in and I looked at him and I looked at Liz and, she's this big and Liz is this big. So I said...
Well, that's normal for most people.
For him or for her?
If you can see, I'm actually sitting on a very tall stool right now.
And I said, we gotta do something with this. So if you remember at one point, she puts your hand in his hand, and it looks like it's like these tiny little fingers.
Yeah.
She had a huge mitt of a hand.
Yeah, we used to put you on an apple box to make you higher behind the counter.
That's true. And then you find, and then we built one. He built a one step up.
Yeah, right. Like in Little People, Big World, we built the whole kitchen for a little person's height. We built our studio around your height.
Right. I have early shows where Liz was behind the counter and she'd rest her arms on the counter to talk to people, and she looked like this. And later we customized the studio for Liz. How tall are you?
Was a problem when Charlie Baker, the governor of Massachusetts, came in, who's like 6'7", and he would tower over when he came behind the counter.
Right.
That's
Charlie
true.
Baker, the governor. Yeah, he came to my show. Liz is 5'2", and you used to wear 3 or 4 inch wedges.
Like 3-inch
3
wedges.
inches wedges. Yep.
The shoe kept getting taller until you guys rebuilt the studio and
the second
gave me a
studio,
platform to stand on. Then I could wear clogs after that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So we get some recognition on the Emmys. The show's kind of on a roll, and we decide to expand.
Yes. So in Boston, adjacent to our main dining room was a travel agency that had been there since the hotel had been built 40 years earlier. And it was too big for her. She didn't need it. The industry was changing, and it was a burden for her. And I had heard about it from her. I went to Taki and I said, Taki, why don't you, he actually had another home for her in another building that they owned that was around the corner. So I said, why don't you let her out of the lease? We'll take the space. Let's modify our lease. We'll pay rent on that. But what we want to do is take that studio, move it there. And now we have 40 seats. And, he said, okay, but we can't, you have to fund it. We can't do that. And I went to Caps. I said, gee, I'd like to, build a new studio here. What's that going to cost?
Another mortgage on the house?
Yeah, about $250,000. And that's us building it. No.
To help, Eastern Bank gave us a small business loan.
Yes, they did.
They did.
Our longtime banking partner in Massachusetts.
Yes.
So that was, I think, 2015.
It was because I was working on the campaign in New Hampshire during construction. That was 2014. Yeah, I remember coming home. Yeah.
Now, by then, we had a 5-year anniversary show in there, but that was in 2015 for Liz. I was looking at it recently.
Yes, 2015 was 5 years anniversary of Liz doing the show. And
Right.
we just surprised you with the a cappella group that came.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God.
So Emerson College is right down the street from this restaurant. Yeah. So a lot of our servers were Emerson students.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Maureen Dacko
was a member of the a cappella group. Do you remember?
Great voice. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
And so she got.
She's in LA. We follow her.
She's been
on
in
Instagram.
California for a long time. I see her on Snapchat singing and playing the piano.
She even performed at Katrina's wedding.
She did.
That?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
So she she would sing during free shift when they were doing their roll-ups and whatnot. And I got to talking to her about it. And I said, she said, well, there's other people that can come in. We could do a whole a cappella thing. So I had them come by one time at the end of the day so I could see them. I wanted to make sure they were good. And on cue, they just started singing and blew me away. And I was like, okay, this is great. I want you to all wear black. That's not a problem. They're all young kids anyway. That's probably all they had in their wardrobe. And Mom coordinated the whole thing, did a rehearsal, and we surprised Liz. Mom cues up the group coming in, they're singing a song. Liz doesn't know about it. It interrupts the show. And they come around down the main aisle. They go around Liz. All this is being filmed. And we actually created a little event out of it. And we gave that to Comcast. And that's a great piece. I'll pull that one also. Mm-hmm. So that's now, we're in there, it's 2015, but we've been in there for a while. And we liked that studio because it had street presence. So now you could walk by and see right into the studio.
It was all glass front to the street. And that there was a door that connected to our offices so she could come and go and not have to go through the restaurant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A lot of benefits there. And we just turned the studio then into another dining room, which we had 5 of them, so we didn't really need it. And now
it became a private dining area.
Private dining room, yeah.
Because we had we tripled our capacity, we started doing a lot more these private shows for companies.
Right.
There was that startup that eventually got bought by Google it was like a Groupon type of thing. Remember they would sell it to like tech companies as a networking event. We were doing those. We had all these pharmaceutical companies, the financial services companies,
liquor companies.
Yeah. Anytime you wanted to do like a sales pitch, you would do a live cooking. You do your sales pitch in our studio, and then we turn the lights off, and it goes right into a live show. So it was a nice event for client development.
Travel agents. There was. You remember all the ones that came from MGM? We did a show for MGM travel agents, and they let us have all of their.
I don't remember.
Oh, with the Scottish guy from Vegas.
Yeah. At this point, we're on a roll. This thing, we were on a roll. And
do you remember the whole Iceland thing? There was that Boston was trying to afford, there was like a sister city thing with Boston and in some city in Iceland. Mm-hmm. And we had all these Icelandic chefs coming out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a show with them. That was with the mayor's office. They were friends with Mayor Ray Flynn, who I became very friendly with later. He had already been out of office. He was an ambassador at one point. He was the ambassador to the Vatican, I think, at one point. So anyway, now we're on a roll, and I think tickets were probably, what, Kathy, $85?
Not bad, probably
They
70
weren't,
around
they
there.
weren't that high at that
Not
point.
yet, okay.
It wasn't
but they were a little bit
until
more at the counter.
Right.
And,
I had 3 levels because we had
We had
the
tiered
counter
pricing,
was the highest, then there was the first gallery and then the second gallery.
And we, for the first time, had the VIP booths.
We had 2, that's right. I forgot about them. Scotty proposed to his wife in the booth, and we had that on camera one time during the show. We played Bruno Mars for him. So
I think I want to marry you.
I want to marry you. Yeah, thank you.
I think I want to marry you.
So that's all happening, and people, you can keep going. You and Maureen, keep going. You can carry a tune. But what's happening is people also want the counter. The counter was the place to be. It was an odd dynamic. Some people did not want to be at the counter. They wanted to be away from the counter. But most people would actually wait. If the counter sold out for one show, they'd just wait for another one because they wanted to be at the counter, because they knew by now, they were going to be on camera. And as we were editing these shows and giving them a Comcast, they knew that, they'd be seen. What they didn't know is I might record 3 or 4 of that show from that series to get the best footage. And I'm focusing on Liz during one show. And then I'm focusing on all the food shots for another recording. And then I'm focusing on all the audience shots for another recording. So what could happen is the husband could ask a question, and then I could have the response of someone else who was not his wife. But, when I edited it together, it looked like he asked a question and she answered it, and it was funny, which got to be a little bit of a problem, because we had some people saying, what was my husband doing at the show with, this woman? And we'd have to explain to them, we're just doing this in editing.
The magic of editing.
And then Liz had groupies. Liz had followers and groupies that they would come to every single new show. The people that ultimately, the ones from Boston that came down to Kingston, you remember them? The woman was she said she was vegetarian.
She said she was vegetarian, but she would try.
Until she came to the cooking show.
Right.
It's very true.
Right.
Even her husband said that we helped because I believe that she was originally vegetarian. And then she started eating a little fish here and there, and she became a pescatarian. And then she finally branched off into land animals. And her husband was the one who said, giving her the confidence to at least just try it. Just try it.
Yeah.
They were great.
They were great. They're wonderful people.
So during this, keep going.
No. I just said, these people became friends of ours. I mean, we would do special events with them. They were constantly emailing us, and it really was. It was very a very tight-knit group, very family oriented, but lots of fun and very supportive. And they put the word out. They were the ones that would get the word out for us all over the city of Boston, what we were doing.
Yeah, we had a nice following in Boston, and we had some features in the Globe. I graduate NYU in 2012, and a few months later in early 2013, I go on a road trip and I end up in Disney or in Orlando, and I see these construction barriers up for what was going to be called Hyperion Wharf, later becomes Disney Springs.
Yeah.
And I start reaching out, cold emailing, cold calling Disney people to try to see if they're going to do this new development, can we put what we were now calling, or we were toying with the name, the Studio Kitchen, to try to separate it from Rustic Kitchen as this live entertainment culinary experience. And so when we did Studio B, we're like, yeah, this is a natural progression of building this brand. Right. And ideally we're going to go to like a Universal or a Disney. So from 2013 on, I'm trying to get that deal going, and I'm working my way up the Disney ladder. We do different presentations. So I hear from Liz. So that from like 2013 until 2020, what is your memory as we as the Cafarellis are trying to build this whole second business? You're now working Rustic Kitchen full time. You're doing the shows. We're constantly trying to record more. in my mind, we're building up to this big resort property. It would be completely separate from Rustic Kitchen. And so what is your memory of those years leading up to Kingston, Liz, of what we were doing? Did you think this was building something bigger? Did you think it was just what we were doing this was it? What was your aspiration at the time?
I mean, I always just loved doing the live show. So I was always very happy and very satisfied with our Friday night and private live shows. That's what I loved the most. I loved that human interaction, the look on people's faces, the conversation afterwards, the build up before. So the television part of it was more something that I enjoyed doing. But if I had a choice, I would have just built a giant stadium and done live shows. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I was just kind of along for the ride. I'm like, oh yeah, Disney, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. Let me know what you need. Oh, okay, let's want to get it on.
You'd see like on our screen, I had like a Disney proposal, and you're like, what's that?
And half the time, I wouldn't even ask. I'd be like, if it pans out, I'll find out.
And say, how come my picture is on there?
Oh yeah, I would use your picture everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure I signed away the likeness of my own face very earlier on.
Speaking of photographs, I must have 10,000 photographs of you, Liz.
Easily, and I think you've probably given me about 4,000 of them. People might think, mental illness definitely plays a part in this because my computer is literally full of photos of me.
Yeah,
I don't look at them very often, but God forbid.
You don't take a bad picture. You really don't. And
so around 20. So after we opened Studio B, which you and Mom make this big new financial commitment, we have a new loan, and in my mind, this is necessary to keep this going on this Disney track. I've been working my way up the ladder. You and I go down. We do a pitch in Orlando. Then a year later, we do another one. At one point, we have 17 executives in the room. All the different hotel VPs at Disney, the F&B, the marketing. Josh D'Amaro, who's now chairman of Park Resorts, was there. I think at the time he was running just Disney World. And we, at least you and I, we think this is going to happen. And so we need to protect this thing. So you kind of alluded to it last episode with this whole right of termination. Around 2015, we have to make a decision of, do we keep this thing alive and potentially move?
Right.
We did. What do you want to tell how that happens now?
So in an earlier episode, Kathy and Liz, Mike and I talked about the behind the scenes when we decided to go into Boston. There was a caveat that we knew from day one, which was Lou and Taki, the Vinius family that owned this property, their parents had built it in 1960 and they were now running it. But they had a clause for every tenant, even the people that had their telephone towers on the roof and the billboards on the roof. There was a termination clause that if they sold the building, all the leases would be terminated, or you were at least on your own you had no more rights to stay there. You were on your own to renegotiate with, who the new owners were. And that was because there were so many different family members, and some of them wanted to be in that business and some wanted to get their money out. So this had existed from day one. And we made a decision to go ahead and build a restaurant there when that space became available in 2006, because we knew they were never going to sell this building. This was built by their father and grandfather, and all the family worked there. And Mom and I talked about it, and it was a calculated risk, but we said, they're never going to sell this building. And we said, we're going to go ahead. So we not only build the restaurant back in 2006, but we amend the lease and extend into the new Studio B and spend more money there, about $250,000. And we did get some protection on that, but they still have this right. This exists throughout the property that if they did sell the building, they could terminate the lease. So we're in there maybe for a year and a half, and we're growing. Everything's going fine. And one day, Taki calls me to come up to his office up in the building. I go to see him, and he says, I've got some interesting news, but I think you guys are going to be fine. There is a group that put an unsolicited offer in to buy the property, and it's a lot of money, and we think we're going to take it. And I said, oh, okay, how does that affect us? And he goes, well, they will have a right to terminate, but why would they want to terminate you guys? You're the best part of the property, great food, great restaurant. great reviews. You have the cooking show, they'll love you guys. And I said, okay, keep me posted. And he says, but this is going to happen quick. It's a 60-day due diligence. These guys are as serious as a heart attack. It's an all cash offer. There's no hidden ghost here that will prevent the sale. This thing's going to go through, Jim. This is going to happen. So I go down and I tell Kathy about it, and we're very upset. We're in panic mode. And not too long afterwards, representatives of that group came and wanted to meet with us. And they told us what they were thinking. And the way they put it was, we don't know what we want to do with the space, but we need to keep all our options open. And so what we're going to do is we're going to trigger all the notices to let people know that we could interrupt if we want to. But we want you to stay and we want you to continue. And oh, by the way, we still want you to provide breakfast and all these other services that we provided that didn't make money for us, but we did them because we were good partners with the Greek family that owned it.
They wanted us to take over. We weren't doing breakfast. They had us. They pushed breakfast on us.
They pushed breakfast on us.
And we don't need to name any names because as your legal counsel,
kind of missing.
Right.
Yeah, we're not going to name any names here, but it's a real estate investment trust, which is a publicly traded company. Right. This is a real estate play. We are basically an inconvenience. We're this tenant that has to be dealt with at this new property they've bought.
Right. You can stay, but in the meantime, we want you to do room service.
The first
we go from a family business that we had known that I'm playing hockey with his son and it's a handshake deal to a publicly traded conglomerate that has now bought this building and says, okay, you got to take over breakfast and room service and or you're out because they have this right of termination.
They send in their F&B guy.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, nothing is written, so we'll consider.
Yeah.
Keeping you here. Right. But in the meantime, you need to do breakfast. You need to do room service.
Which if we hadn't just done the studio, we probably said, you know what? We'll take a Rustic Kitchen elsewhere.
So we
had just done this whole investment. We didn't want to lose the show. I was working on this deal with Disney. And so we're like, well, we got to keep this alive at least for a little bit.
Right.
So we acquiesce. Yeah.
So they send their F&B guy in, and he goes back and says, look, these guys are the best part of the property. They've got it going on. They've got a great restaurant. It makes money. They're paying their rent. They've got this cooking show. It's a wild card. We need to kind of work more with them, not less with them. So ultimately they come back and they say, what we want to do with the property, what we think we want to do is we want to rebrand it. There was some discussion of the Radisson wanting them to make it a Radisson Blue, which had been kicking around with Lou and Taki for a while. In the end, they decided not to do that, but they were going to rebrand it, and they came up with the Revere name, and they reconceptualized the entire property.
A play on Paul Revere.
But anybody who's from Boston thought it was Revere, the town Revere.
People would get in a cab.
By the way, we love Revere.
People would say, I'm going to the Revere Hotel, and the cab driver would drive them to Revere.
Yeah.
Not the Revere Hotel. Yeah.
Oh, we love Revere. We love a lot of friends in Revere.
Yeah.
So anyway, but the other thing is they quickly come to us and they say, look, in order for us to really compete in Boston with this new branded hotel, we have to be a 4-diamond property. And the food and beverage component of a hotel is huge. So you have to become a 4-diamond restaurant. And we had to figure out how to do that. And
I think Katrina enters the picture on this time too, because her memory is you and I are in Mexico.
Right.
This all happens. She gets hired, and I think that her first assignment is now we're going to get a 4-diamond standard.
Yeah. And Katrina's great. We're going to do an episode with Katrina. Katrina, when we hired her for the breakfast that we had to take over. We needed a morning manager, and she was moving on from another job. She didn't like what was happening there. And I remember someone came into my office and said, your interview is here. And I said, okay, I'll be right out. And whatever this server's name was, she looked at me, she goes, she looks just like Tina Fey. and I said, oh, okay. So when I came out of my office and I'm walking across the dining room, looking into the bar cafe, she's sitting there, and it looked like Tina Fey was sitting at the bar. So we had a great interview, and I hired her, and she said, okay, I'm just going to give my notice, and I'm going to give them 2 weeks notice. And I said, okay, well, they're probably just going to terminate you on the spot. And she goes, oh, no, they won't do that. And I said, be prepared for that. Sure enough, she goes in, she tells them, gives 2 week notice, and they said, okay, you can leave now. And she comes over right away And I said, well, we'll start you now. We can use you now. We'll train you for 2 weeks. We're not starting breakfast 2 weeks. And she goes, how did you know? I said, I would do the same thing. Honestly, there's no value in you staying at that job at that point. You become cancer to the other people around you. They know you're leaving. So the best thing to do is just cut you loose. It might be cold. It may be hard, but from a business point of view, that's what a lot of people do. So she comes on board, and we have to adopt these 4 diamond standards. Now, the 4 diamond standards are a guideline, but there's a lot of area in between that you can sort of interpret how certain things go. And we also had our own standards. In some cases, our standards were higher than the 4 diamond standards. So what we did, and she and I worked together in this, is we meshed the standards together and came up with a new Rustic Kitchen guideline that we were going to train our staff to check all the standards of 4 diamond, but also maintain the personal nature of how our staff worked. And we had to go through a training period. It took us, I don't know, almost 3 months. We were constantly testing our staff, and we were doing
secret shoppers that come in. And
secret shoppers doing a weekly secret shopper would come in and do a report. And I'll never forget,
I was only greeted by name once, and I should have been greeted by my name 3 times in the first 5 minutes.
And, on the phone, there's a certain phone etiquette. So at one point, the president of this company had been in the restaurant. He's sitting at the bar, and how's everything? Everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. And is there anything I can do for you? And I'll never forget, he looked me dead in the eye and he said, just make sure that you get to be 4 diamond, or else you're going to be holding up the whole works. And it was so condescending. And I'm saying to myself, we're better operators at restaurants than you are at hotels, but you're the boss. And in the end, I don't know if you remember this, Michael, but our scores were always better. On the shopping scores, we always
achieved
higher.
The certification before them.
We got the certification before the hotel did. And I actually think that something happened. They needed that. I don't know what they did, but all of a sudden they weren't getting it, and then they got it. But we had it first, and our staff stepped up. And then what happened was we adapted that to the standards of our other restaurants, because there were parts of it that really applied well, especially when it came to the customer experience. And so all that was happening sort of behind the scenes, and we're in our mind, Liz, I don't know if you ever knew this, but there was a point where we could have sort of pulled the plug and said, we don't need this, but we didn't want the show to die. We didn't want to lose this unique thing that you had created and that we had built, and it was so special to us. And honestly, Friday nights were the most fun we would have all week, no matter what happened in the course of
all week was so boring. They're just sitting there.
Or stressful. And then we'd go into that studio on a Friday night.
Pop the Kim Crawford and
roll
into the weekend.
Just have a blast. So we didn't want to lose that. And that was...
Oh, I'll wait.
Okay. You sure?
I mean, if you have one first.
Well, for our listeners, they need to understand that you've had drinks a lot earlier than this right now. Hanging around.
That is true. No. Okay. Well, before the show, not usually. No.
Yeah,
in the very beginning,
no.
I think I did have like a beverage or two. Kathy would supervise. No, it was like just loosen you up a little bit.
I would wait till
it was always under supervision. I was never let loose.
One of our tenders.
But, see, I never thought you
saying, "Don't tell anyone."
I never thought you needed loosening up, though, Liz. Honestly, our job, we always felt, was to kind of just have guardrails around you, just to keep you from.
You guys were the bumpers for sure.
We
Kathy would be like,
but I never felt like we had to wind
you up. I think that's not good. I think we should change the topic.
So we really change our business around this new owner, and very quickly we have another new owner.
Right, very quickly on.
After they achieved their certification and all the scores go,
and they flipped the building.
A real estate flip.
It.
Now this third group that's in paid almost double what the second group paid, and the pressure's on.
Now they are even a bigger publicly traded company.
And they are as serious as a heart attack. And we
literally are just one number in a spreadsheet that they were out of, I want to say DC or Maryland. And this is just one of hundreds of properties. And we are just one little number that has to be dealt with by an analyst.
Right.
Yeah.
And we didn't...
not only that, they did not get the cooking show. They didn't understand.
Yeah, they didn't know what we were doing.
That's a wasted space.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we're doing was
Everything
wasting
about
space.
them was contrary to everything about us.
They looked at our square footage and went, well, this could be a gym. This could be a CVS.
Or spa.
And
right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
why
offices.
are you doing all this other stuff
Right.
when you should just maximize square footage?
Yeah. So my first meeting with them, I knew it was over in the meeting. And really at that point, it was just a protection mode. What do we do? We had a couple of very difficult meetings. Mom and I attended a meeting one time, essentially where, this guy was trying to threaten me. And I said, look, we're not afraid of you. And I'm sure there were a few choice words in the middle of it. And as we walked away from that meeting, I looked at Mom, I said, it's over. It's over. We got to find a new home.
Liz, were you able to pick up that the relationship was deteriorating and the Boston was deteriorating, during this period?
Did you know what was going on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know, I didn't know the play-by-play. I didn't know that Tuesday was the meeting and then Friday was the phone call. But there were days where I would come in and Jim would be agitated. And then he would explain to me behind closed doors, using a few choice words, how he felt about what was happening that week or what had happened, what we have coming up. So I was never blissfully unaware of what was going on, but I do feel as though, I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe there just wasn't conversation that was had with me about when you finally decided that we had to pull the plug.
Yeah.
I feel like that was very fast, and it was like, all right, rip all the shit off the walls, pack everything, fuck these guys, blah, blah, blah.
The new studio was only a year old.
Year
Yeah.
and a half,
18
I think.
months.
18
Yeah.
months. Yeah. 18 months. Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like,
Tear it all down.
Which, by the
And-
way, they thought that they would take possession of all of our improvements, and
Yeah.
we had protection that we owned all the improvements,
Yeah.
and the name and the license and the likeness and the image and all the intellectual property.
Yes,
So
this is around this period is I'm incorporating some LLCs, I'm registering copyrights and trademarks, because I'm seeing this is going to blow up. And so we have, there was a year there where it felt like every week the three of us are like, do we really believe in this thing? How much is the show a future? Yeah, go ahead.
Meanwhile, we also, I'm running Hingham. The Hingham restaurant is, and I can't let them know what's going on and be a downer when I'm, behind the line expoing on a Wednesday night or whatever there, and then have a happy face and then go into Boston and try to figure out what we're going to do.
right.
And I'm afraid of losing this platform in downtown Boston, because that's where we're showing it. So we're people are coming in from Mexico and from Disney and from Vegas, and we want something to show them. And so we're chained to this thing that is a bad relationship, getting worse every day.
They were abusive. They were
they're stealing stuff from the kitchen. They're locking us out of stuff.
Right.
We'd have wars of room service where they would raid our kitchen for room service. So but the three of us at least are like, well, this show, we don't want the show to die. So we really put all our faith in that we don't want to kill this show.
Yeah.
And so that ends up to, we look for a new deal.
I looked at a lot of deals in Boston. I wanted to stay in Boston, and a lot of people loved us and wanted us to come to their property, but there would have been huge gaps. Maybe they'd have to vacate a space, and then we'd have to demo it and have to build it, and it might be 18 months of nothing, or it would just be too expensive, or they would want the show without the restaurant, and these things are linked
Or
together.
the restaurant
as you
without
know.
the show.
Or the restaurant without the show. So all the while, I'm looking at Boston locations. And this group that owned a property down in Kingston, which is right next to Plymouth, Mass, back sort of in your backyard, Liz, where you were from, kept wanting us to go to this mall that they were sort of rebirthing. And I didn't pay them much mind, but when all my options were drying up in Boston, they gave them a call. I went down there, and the long and short of it is they embraced the idea. They were like, this is exactly what we want. And we put a deal together. And the space already existed, was part of an old JCPenney. So we were able to just put a wall up and start. I had to build a restaurant and a studio there, but the space was there. And when we finally knew we had that deal and we served notice to the landlord in Boston, they thought they would just be able to kick us out and take the space. And we fought for a while, but we were able to prove we own everything here. And we stripped that place to the bone.
Jim, you were like picking up particles of dust and putting them in a bag, pulling the nails up off the floor that are bent, can't be used. This is mine. They can't
took
have
every
any
bit of improvement that I
Clips
put in.
are mine. That tack is mine.
That paint scraping the paint off the walls into a bag.
I have
Load up
to
an 18-wheeler and we're going down to Kingston.
I have to leave the sprinkler head, but those chrome escutcheon plates that go around it, those are ours.
I'll put a 10-cent light bulb and I'm taking a fixture.
That's right.
You know?
It was like that.
Oh,
And
God.
the chief engineer on the property knew our capabilities. I'm a builder. So, I called in our forces. I called in my backup and I said, guys, we're going to take everything from here. We're going to disconnect it, put it in trucks, ship it down to Kingston and rebuild it all, just like set design.
Mhm.
And they were like, okay, great. And they did that. And so we took what we had there, went down and built the newest, biggest, best restaurant and
But we
studio.
couldn't call it Rustic Kitchen because on my lease in the Hingham Rustic Kitchen, we had a radius restriction.
Yeah.
We could not
We were
have
still
another
within
Rustic
that.
Kitchen
Right.
within a certain radius. And
Right.
Kingston was right on that line, and I didn't want to lose
Mhm.
Hingham
Right.
or be in trouble with Hingham, so we called it Bar Rustic.
Right. And we
And-
were
and
open
part of-
in 2016.
So
down there.
Yeah, we opened
2016, we opened Bar
fall
Night and
Rustic.
day, round the clock, and open that thing.
And we basically, the whole team pretty much moved. Katrina, Liz, everyone. And but
Michael,
the key
you
thing
moved down to Pine Hills.
I moved to Plymouth. Yeah, I
You
opened,
moved down
there
to
for
Plymouth, and you were
construction.
on site
I
by
came back from
5
LA. Yeah, and
a.m.
I ran that job site.
Mhm.
But the thing to remember is we did it not because this was a good space. It's because we were trying to keep the company alive. It was our
Mhm.
only
Right.
option.
right.
And so we took really a B or a C location that didn't really have the infrastructure, didn't have the other. We were alone in a new wing that was
Right.
supposed to have all these other restaurants. So we took a bad deal because we thought, well, we need to keep the show alive. We want to keep, and also we wanted to keep the team. We didn't want to lay off,
Right.
50 people. So we took a bad deal because we're like, well, this is a stepping stone to keep all these other things that were percolating. We had these, we were talking to people in Vegas. We were talking to people in Florida. We were talking to people in London. We were talking to people in Mexico. And the Cafarellis, at least, we thought, well, this will just keep it alive as a showroom,
Right.
and we'll get to the next step.
And as long
We
as
had
it doesn't
such a
hurt
great
us,
team
we'll-
in Boston that the
Yeah.
majority of them followed us to Kingston.
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
we had kitchen staff who literally never owned a car, bought a car so
Yeah,
they
we
could
down
drive
there.
to
Yeah.
Kingston and still
everyone
work
down
for
there
us.
kept
Renee
saying-
and Jose, remember those? They would run the whole line. The two of them, two of the best
Marvin
cooks we've ever.
and
Marvin, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everyone down in Kingston was saying, why the hell are you coming here? This made no sense to anyone. When we went to the town hall to get our license, people were pulling me aside in the lobby before the town committee. But what are you planning on doing here?
Right. You're in Kingston.
You know you're in Kingston, right?
But,
And
it
it's
worked.
a half-empty mall.
It was half empty
Yeah,
mall. And
more than half.
more than half. They were a friendly landlord, though, although they didn't really deliver on their side of things. They recognized that we did. But what I thought was interesting was people would travel from Boston, customers, show patrons, friends
Yes.
of Liz, the groupies. They travel all the way down there and attend the shows. So it was like they didn't miss a beat.
So this is like Studio 4.0. So this one we had done the original 112-seater. We had done Mohegan, Pennsylvania. We had done Studio B. This was our nicest studio. This thing had the height we'd always wanted for cameras and had little vignette areas.
It
and we
had
a
your
real
own. You had your own dressing room.
We had a green room. We had a bathroom. We had a
Yeah,
shower
We had
for the
a
talent.
bathroom and shower for you, Liz.
That's
We
true.
even- we
I
had a
still
hookup for
have
a
those
washer and
towels
dryer.
from the bathroom, Kathy.
So yeah, Liz, what was your impression of this new studio down there?
I loved it. I mean, it really didn't matter to me where the space was. I just wanted to come in and do my job.
So at this point, it's now fully called the Studio Kitchen. It's separate from Bar Rustic and Rustic Kitchen. And it's 2016 now. And we try to make a go down there in this market that, we really were way above the market. I'm living down in Plymouth now, and we're doing these shows, and we're really just trying to get exposure and investment money, and, or some deal to make this all worthwhile. And we come barreling into 2020.
We missed that we went to another Emmy
Well,
right
every
before
year we
we
went to the
moved.
Emmys. Yeah.
And we got our second and third Emmys.
Yeah.
So there was, I think, was there back-to-back years where we get another 7 nominations and no wins, and that's
Right.
a long night.
Michael,
But it
we
was
had
the
one
end.
year.
It
we
was
had
right
one year
after.
we
It was
had
right
8
when we were
nominations.
moving. We were
And
moving out of
no
Boston.
wins.
No, it's and 2 nominations were in the same category, and I knew we were definitely going to win that, and we struck out. And this is, those comments from Jake coming back over and over again.
But we're in the middle of the room now. We had moved up tables. As you get more nominations, they moved you up in the tables, but then our winning percentage went down.
But it was like 1 week before we left Boston that we went to the Emmys and we won.
We won again.
And it was like...
Yeah, so
big
Liz has
F
won
you
Best Host.
To the new owners.
Yeah.
Yes.
They didn't care.
So Liz wins Best Host. We had already won Best Interstitial. Did you win Best Host? No, we won Set Design twice.
Set Design twice.
You win Best Host. We won Set Design twice.
You beat out, Liz beat out
some big names.
Like all of our, we don't want to name them, but
we don't want to name names, but
important broadcasters.
Major sports teams, major journalistic publications, major corporations in the city.
Yes.
She beat them all. And,
Best host moderator in New England.
That's right. And we were going at this point. We had gone to every Emmy. We had been nominated every year for 9 years.
Yeah. And
at the end, we're not only sitting in the middle of the room with all the big boys. Liz, they get to know her so well that they see her every year and they watch her. They ask her to become a presenter, which was a great honor.
Yeah, you were a presenter.
I forgot about that.
Liz was presenter for that. I forget what category she presented for.
Because we were drinking a lot in those days.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what you do when you own and operate restaurants. You gotta do something to take the edge off at the end of the day.
So we win, we go there. We start building up this, we do kind of build up our sales there. And in late 2019, we go back to Disney. We have another round of presentations, and we were successful.
They come up. They send
a whole team up, brother.
They sent a whole team up, and we get from that meeting.
Yeah.
Very shortly afterwards, we get notified that we were approved to become an operating participant.
Yeah. We do this whole. We have to do a back. Their head of security was like the former head of the FBI. They do a whole background check on us.
Yeah.
They do credit checks. We become approved operating participant. We identify the location down at Disney.
Did a complete design.
Mm-hmm. And we have the menus design. We have the thing fully Revit 3D. This thing is ready to go. And in January of 2020,
wait.
What? Yep.
And then all this is all promising and everything's going great. And then our landlord in Hingham says,
this is end of 2019.
It's the middle of 2019.
Yep.
And they said they give us a notice saying we've been there for
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
So our 15-year lease was up.
The very
first tenant in
this
that
whole thing's been built
dirty
around
street
us.
shops.
Yep. We've won every award for Hingham.
They gave us a notice saying that our rent is going to nearly double.
Yeah.
Right.
And they want us to
And they want us
to
our concept of Rustic Kitchen is outdated. They want us to modernize it, and they want us to change the whole look of the outdoor patio as well. Everything they want us to change.
Yeah. Basically hit the reset button and start over again.
And pay more money.
We can't.
Pay a lot more money. Yeah.
I went to Dad, to Jim, and I said, we can't afford that. We can't do it.
Yeah. And their point
so then
was,
I had to, after, closing Boston, then I had to tell all the Hingham people we're closing Hingham.
Right.
So we closed the end of 2019. December 31st, 2019.
So we go from
Hingham
having
was closed.
several restaurants, several Rustic Kitchens to very few.
Right.
So that's December 2019. So January 2020, or maybe February, we get word, Disney says, we're going to redo the roof and the HVAC, getting ready to turn over the space view. Like, this is a real deal.
Yeah.
And they're going to put new HVAC, new ceiling. They're doing some other work in the like a loading dock. And this was happening.
Yeah.
And then COVID
hits.
2 weeks later, COVID hits. Disney World closes. And over the next few months, the dozen of people at Disney we worked with.
Kingston is closed because of COVID.
We're forced closed. Boston and New York shut down early with COVID. Right. And I see on LinkedIn over the next few months, all my contacts at Disney are laid off or fired, and now they're at Amazon, and now they're here, and it's just this slow, like, oh, this is dying, and this pandemic's not going away. And by the end of 2020, we close Kingston.
Well, we closed Kingston.
Well, the government shuts us down for a while.
Right.
We closed Kingston.
Then we're allowed to do takeout for a little bit.
We made it till, what was it, 4th of July weekend or?
Yeah, around the summer. Yeah, we made it to the summer, I think. They shut us down completely for like 2 months. Then we allowed to do only takeout for a while.
Which
was a dog.
You know, we had to remove most of the tables, the distancing. Everybody knows what you had to do with COVID in a restaurant. So we had to.
We also lost a ton of product. We had to close down, and insurance wouldn't cover anything.
We couldn't open the shows because of the closed seating in the studio. So we couldn't do shows right away. I slowly started to do them because I didn't want people to forget about the shows. So I would do every third seat in the gallery. No one could sit next to each other, which didn't really work that well.
Yeah.
And then I basically ran out of money. That's it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know the epitaph of this whole thing, Liz, but the mall loses control of the mall, and it goes into bankruptcy. And it was a $158 million mall. And in the end, it was sold at auction for $9.7 million. That entire, almost 1 million square feet for $9.7 million to a REIT, not a REIT, some private investment group from Florida.
And that whole company is basically, they're losing all their properties. The whole mall, we know what happened with shopping centers in this country. So 2020 basically ends everything we're doing because the restaurants are either forced closed. Mexico also.
Mexico, they shut down and
the pandemic ends,
and never reopened.
Yeah, everything we're doing, and so Liz, when we close, in your mind, is it over, or were you thinking we were just going to move again?
What I remember is Kathy calling me and saying, "We're closing the restaurant. It's real, and it's for good," and I didn't really understand because we'd been working together for like 10 years. So of course I had to process the information. And it was weird. It was like hearing that somebody close to you has passed away and you were very close with that person, but then you don't cry initially. And then a few days later, you're in the shower like, why? But it was weird. It was weird. And I think that Jim and I had a conversation maybe even just a couple of weeks later, because I think I was just like, what happens with my contract? Like, what happens here? And Jim was like, act of God, null and void. There's no restaurant to support the show. And so it doesn't, it's on pause.
Yeah.
So we then have to wind down everything, fight with another landlord about how we're going to vacate this space, what's going to happen with these loans, and the only Rustic Kitchen that survives this period is Mohegan, Pennsylvania.
Which didn't open. That took even longer because casino protocols after COVID were really strict, the strictest of all.
Yeah.
So we couldn't do shows, even with the restaurant opening, we couldn't do shows there for a long time.
Yeah. And it came back. It's doing fine now. And we haven't really talked about PA, but there's another studio down there that was, I think, studio number 3. We built PA before we built Studio B.
Well, 1, 2.
Yeah, it's number 2.
3, 4.
We did 4.
3, 4. Yeah, that's the 4th one.
And, it took that. The world had changed. Everything, as anyone knows, when it comes to COVID, everything has changed. This industry in particular will never be the same. even today, Michael, I don't know if we'll talk about it later, but a very famous Boston chef just announced today the closing of the final restaurant of their entire empire.
Every week I read some famous chef is finally closing whatever iconic place. It's been in the last 4 years.
National groups, are going left and right. So, our industry is very different.
While we have Liz, so Liz, you went from, you were running our kitchens, certainly on the kitchen manager side. You were the face of the show of the Studio Kitchen. All that ends 2020, 2021. You go where? You do not jump into another kitchen, right?
I did not. So actually, when COVID hit, I was just doing the show, I think, for like 2 or 3 years at that point, because I was oyster farming. I left Rustic and I went and became an oyster farmer. Yep. And then when COVID hit,
you got chickens.
I
a lot of chickens.
Chickens and oyster farms. Yep. Yeah.
I was actually the purchasing manager for Four Seasons One Dalton at that time. I started working there in April of 2019.
Right.
So basically a full year at that point, and COVID happened.
Right.
So you're now finally in your element from a logistical purchasing sourcing standpoint, and the only time you're cooking is for our shows.
Correct.
Yeah. So you're at Four Seasons during COVID, and then Us at Night, and then where do you go after Four Seasons?
Four Seasons for 4 years, 3.5 years, and then I went to Cisco, and that's where I started doing. I was their produce buyer, and I actually started out just buying for Boston, and by the end of my year and 3/4 at Cisco, I was buying produce for Boston, Northern New England, and Albany. And then I just recently left Cisco, and now I'm at Performance Food Service in Taunton as their produce category manager. So I take care of their produce department for the site.
And they're really good guys.
They're awesome.
And they treat you well.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, good.
It's I want to say it's old school, but there's a lot more freedom to do what I do best, which is basically pivot. Actually, I think we all pivot really well.
What you do best. I like that name.
Yes.
I think I'll do something with that.
So, what do you think, Liz? What are you more nostalgic about, cooking in restaurants or the live shows?
Well, those are two completely different animals. Two completely different things. I mean, I always loved working in kitchens because the camaraderie that you get out of that environment is second to none. I mean, these are, if I called one of my old sous chefs and said I had a body, they would ask no questions, show up with a bunch of trash bags, and we'd never talk about it again. It would be amazing. But the show was a true creative outlet for me. So I loved running kitchens and managing kitchens, but I wasn't as creative in that environment, where the show was literally just a creative slide, like just let it go.
Listen, improv.
Yeah,
like stand up, comedian, improv.
And we
who's
forgot to
an amazing chef.
We forgot to mention.
Thank you.
People would come just to watch her knife skills.
Oh my God! Yeah.
The Disney guys commented on that, by the way.
Yes.
And this kind of got lost in both COVID. It premiered during COVID, but we did a whole television show. We did the foodie. So after years of Comcast and the on demand, we, leading up in that 2019 period, thinking we're going to go to Orlando, we produce for NECN, which is a Comcast Universal owned regional station in New England. We actually do real full linear television. We did the foodie. We did 6 episodes. That premieres like during the lockdowns.
Yeah, exactly.
I think like March of 2020 that premieres. So that gets lost, and we can't go into production on season 2 because now we've lost our studio.
Right.
So the whole other business that we had been working on that comes crashing down. So
it's so good that we can laugh about it now.
I know. Yeah.
So by the end of 2020, Rustic Kitchen in Massachusetts is over. The foodie is over. The Studio Kitchen is over. PA is closed but comes back. Liz goes off to be a purchasing manager and leader.
Maven.
Guru. And now it's only in a few years later that we're able to open this wound and reflect on that crazy 15-year run.
Yeah.
It's wild.
But I still buy all my food and clothing at Costco.
I was just there last weekend picking up stuff.
Do we still have a Restaurant Depot card? Can we go there?
I don't know.
Wait, do we have to have a business to have that?
No,
that was originally the rule. You had, you had to have
but they don't check that.
They haven't verified.
Yeah, they don't care. Our money is as good as anyone else's. So.
Yes.
So I think we need to get Jake on an episode for his perspective on this.
100%.
He's the missing ingredient here. Love to get Chef Kim's perspective from. So all the while we're doing this, we have a satellite operation going on at Mohegan, Pennsylvania.
Right,
and that's
also
even
talked about.
Yeah, we haven't touched that. But this was good to get Liz's experience here.
Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Well, Liz, what I'd like to do is do another podcast with you, just talking about the foodie. Yep. Because that particular show was a traveling food show around New England.
Fun.
It was fun. We went to some great locations. We had unique
I love
access.
That.
We went to certified Angus beef down in Ohio. We actually went to their main facility and did our beef show, all about beef. We went
inside a beef carcass, right?
At one point, she was.
I was standing next to it outside of beef.
Right out the door.
Do you remember how you would open up a chicken and put your hand inside the
hen?
The Cornish game hen.
Cornish game hens, right.
That was an accident. That was my ADHD on fire.
Well, that's another. So I think we talked about the foodie. We talked about those 6 episodes.
Foodie reflection on that.
We had oysters. We had flour, eggs, beef,
Fenway
lobster,
Park.
And then Fenway Park. The food's Fenway Park.
We had all access pass to Fenway Park. Yeah.
But I also think we should talk about in a separate episode just about the bloopers, because as the editor of the show, when you record a show, you are in there for an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes. And the show's over in your mind. As an editor, when I'm trying to turn that into some sort of a video asset, I sometimes can watch a particular show 10, 11, 12, 15 times or different pieces of it as I'm editing it and, balancing it, white balancing, color correcting, audio mixing. And I was able to find things that would normally get cut out and turn them into these bloopers. And we did so many shows and we had so many of these bloopers that Jake early on started and he created this blooper reel. And the blooper reel would just, over time, would just grow, and we'd update it, put 3 or 4 more bloopers on there and grow and grow and grow. And some of these jokes, which I still die laughing, how you could think that fast to respond with that natural ability on the spot with perfect timing. You can't train to do that. You either have that ability or you don't, and you had it. So I think we'll just do an episode. You still have it. Yeah, she's still doing it. We'll do an episode on the bloopers. So to this
I'm
very
looking forward to it.
To this very day, once in a while, we'll be somewhere and it'll be too much for what we're doing, and Kathy will go, too much.
Classic Liz line. Too much.
And easy peasy, lemon
squeezy.
What queasy?
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Right.
Jesus, she did it too much.
Yeah, Liz, thanks for coming down.
Thanks for having me. Michael, don't forget to wear your sunscreen.
Yeah, she would call me pale, Earl. Which is it? Do I sunscreen or too pale? Come on.
You have to do both.
It's too much.
I don't.
Too much.
Too much.
All right, everyone. I think this was fun. I will talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.